suggest we get started for the session. So for those of you sort of listening in and hopefully seeing us, welcome to our booth. We'll be just doing about sort of 20 minutes, 25 minutes of discussion, and then I'll open the floor to any questions, any points that any of the attendees may want to join. At that point, I will invite everybody onto the stage, as we call it, to be able to participate. So you probably may have seen some of our sessions already. We have run these breakout sessions focusing on specific themes which I felt to be of general interest. And at the moment, we're going to discuss today about aviation health measures, and looking at what's in place now and also what's coming up in future. I'd like to introduce our panelists. So I'll be moderating the debate and introducing the topics. I'm very pleased to be joined here by Mr. Lee, who's Director and Head Airport Operations at Changi Airports Consultants, Changi International. Welcome aboard, Hock Lye. And with a bit of luck, hopefully we can get Anthony Martin from Aegis, Development Director, who appears to have some issues connecting, which is a bit of a shame. So without much ado, I'll get on to our discussion. So really, these are sort of just some topics that we like to cover. I guess the first point really is discussing around the current range. We've seen a range of measures at level, at airline level. There's facility measures. There's a lot of cleaning and cleaning solutions that have been introduced. There's of course restrictions with regards to social distancing, the use of masks, also access control onto terminals, and also certain airports, and it really depends on by region, have introduced a number of health checks. And these go from sort of physical health checks, just somebody taking a look, to temperature checks, whether these are automatic or handheld devices, and a number of restrictions of the likes. Really, sort of without much ado, I'm going to hand over to Hock Lye to what measures have you seen introduced? Let's start with Changi and also the range of airports that you support, and what do you think are perhaps sort of the good ones, the bad ones, and so on.
Yeah, thanks, Fernando. It's interesting because many of the airports in the East, right, in Asia especially, this is not the first time for them. They have the SARS back in 2003. So they have the experience as well as the so-called, many of them have their PCP contingency plans ready when this pandemic hits. The only thing that they are not aware of is that how long and how big this whole problem is. Previously, it was contained, and right now it's a global thing. Eh? Now, as it is an invisible threat, we have to make it tangible so that people can understand and see what it is, so that they are less afraid. And hence, you were talking about all the measures that we have put in place, like telling people how much cleaning, extra cleaning that has been put in place, the new type of so-called detergent that are.
Sorry, Hock Lye, you got onto mute, unfortunately. Not quite sure why. Oh no, we still can't hear you. That is surprising. You are showing us on mute, but we've lost your sound. No.
Is this okay? Testing.
Yes, that's
all right.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's
perfect. As I was saying, right, the whole idea is to take away the fear from this invisible threat, and hence you have to do things that are visible for the passengers and for the staff. Therefore, you were talking about these measures such as cleaning, the so-called social distancing or safe distancing, we call it, the wearing of masks, and coming to this thing about the health checks. Yes, this thing about taking the temperature, I know that in Europe, it took them a long time. for the
Yeah.
European airports to try to get it put in place, because we were trying to get the airlines flying out of Changi to do that the so-called temperature screening of the passengers on departure as well as arrival. But then when we speak with the with the other airlines of what happened when they go into Europe or when they are coming back into Changi, and they were saying that, look, in the European airports it's not mandatory at all. But
Yeah.
it is the whole idea of showing people that there's something has been done, something to allay their fears, something to make them
Yeah.
feel more confident. Yeah. So this whole ideas of having all these measures and so on and so forth, a lot of them are psychological, in addition to the benefits that they have. Now,
Yeah.
no single measures by itself will be able to stop the pandemic or the infection or the transmission, right? But if you have a series of a multi-layered series of so-called measures in place, right? Hopefully that will decrease until there's no transmission when the passenger arrives at the aeroplane and takes the
Yeah.
aircraft on their flights into the next destination. You see, from the airport's point of view, we have the space, and we also
Yeah.
have the time because the passengers can come much earlier. We can so-called tell the passengers to come earlier, and there
Yeah.
are enough space over there. But once they're inside the plane, it's totally different. Yeah, right.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you make the differentiation between the response in Asia and the response in Europe and the rest of the world. Really,
Mm.
I completely agree with you that while SARS, for example, gave probably sort of the start of a number of measures across airports. It was very much seen as something that was done in Asia, rather than
Mm.
something that was replicated in Europe. And even contingency plans. My background is in the UK, but I look at other. I look at some of our airport clients in Europe, in North America. Very very difficult to get going at the beginning. Very reactive and almost sort of over the top in some cases, or difficult to implement. And at the beginning, still a view that this is an Asia
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
We'll wait.
Mm.
There's a point that really interests me, which is about the impact onto customer service. So
Mhm.
I think that there's a big part of the measures which is about explaining and reassuring people of the
Mm.
of basically what we are bringing on board,
Mm.
and that's important. But what are your views with regards to how you can marry these what are essentially sort of restrictive measures with offering a product, offering a customer service product that is attractive and that is positive.
The, the good thing that comes out of this pandemic is the push towards digitization, right? Trying to get a contactless airport concept. Many airports were talking about it, going contactless, meaning that everything is self-service by the passengers themselves, and therefore, from the airport perspective, it frees up a lot of space and makes the process much smoother. So for those passengers, the frequent flyers, for example, they are more used to that, and from that point of view, it makes it a much better product for them because they could just want to get to the airport, get check-in, drop their bags, right, and get onto the plane or do whatever they need to do. So there's this group of people that says that from a customer service perspective, I just do not need to see another human beings. I just want to get to my plane and get on board and do my stuff. So that's one aspect. Then there's the other passengers who are not so familiar with the airports, and this is the part where there are a lot of so-called communications at the airport to tell them of why all these new measures are put in place, how to use the new measures such as facial recognition, touchless booth, where you do not actually touch the screen itself or the buttons. It's just by there's a layer of so-called laser that looks where you are going, where you are pointing, and gives you the information that you need. Because from the pandemic point of view, the first instance was that the mode of transmission is by droplets onto surfaces, and hence people will be very careful about touching surfaces. And also the earlier measures of where we are telling people that we are all so many cleaning and so many wipings and so on and so on to reassure them. So the whole idea from a customer service is to reassure the passengers or the customers that comes to the airport that, hey, it's a safe place. It's safer than many other places you have been to. So yeah, and again, coming back to the thing about the temperature, right? It reassures people that, look, if you have a temperature or you have a fever or transient fever, whatever, people are taking you aside for you to be seen to through the medical aspect of it. Now, the other thing is about masks, right? Mask is more for the protection of the staff, because
Mhm.
the staff wants to be reassured that, hey, when I come to the airport to work, or when I come to provide that service for the customers or the passengers going through, I want to feel safe. And this is one thing that I think there's also a cultural difference between the wearing of masks in the West as well as in the East, the Eastern culture and inside the West. But it has been proven that mask does effectively helps to control the transmission. So scientifically, is there. So even though there are no requirements or for some airports for people to wear masks, I think it's highly recommended because it's a proven thing. Let me share with you a story. Initially in Singapore, you were not required to wear masks because scientifically there were no evidence that it really helps in the control. Also, the masks were reserved for all the frontline workers, the medical staff, and so on and so forth. So for the first month or so, it was not mandatory until we saw more and more reports about that the mask helps in containing the transmission and breaking up the chain of transmission. And then it becomes mandatory for the whole of the country. So it's all based on scientific evidence, scientific facts. So, yeah.
Not very good, thank you. And I think I mean our views is that we will see progressively the aviation health measures being integrated into essentially sort of the management system of the airports, and that will
Mm,
then take into account the health and balance
mm,
the staff concerns, but also requirements, the passengers, the passenger concerns, and but also the passenger customer service. I think those things need to be integrated at a holistic level to be able to achieve any form of unity. We'll talk about this a bit later, but
mm.
these measures are here to stay, and we need to make sure that they're there. Um, I'm just going to just make a small mention. We're trying to get Anthony Martin from Aegis on board. William, if you could help him, he seems to be has unclicked on both microphone and camera, but doesn't seem to be able to join us. If you could take a look at that, William, that'll be great. Thank you. We'll carry on our discussion, and hopefully Anthony can join us. I guess the point is sort of the role of the regulator here, and by regulator, let's call sort of at the authorities at a
Mhm.
wider level. Something which I'm sure that I'm not going to find extremely frustrating is that we are used and we have built our aviation industry, certainly airports, airlines, and all the operation that goes around it, around very much sort of common international standards. There are variations country to country. I mean, security, for example, does include a number of strong variations. However, the core requirements, the core approaches are very much common, and that's something which really sort of is quite a clash with a set of requirements, a set of laws, a set of mandates which are very much set at national level. I mean, even in Europe, where perhaps you expect to have a greater coordination, that there is a disparity of measures between countries, which makes then the main principle of flying. You just leave one country and arrive to the other, and things look similar. You expect that those things are going to be in place, and it's exactly the opposite. So it's certainly a point of frustration. I mean, what's first of all, what's your experience in Singapore, in the region, and what's your views on this? How are you still are you at the frustrated level, or are you more at the integrated level?
You look at the COVID situation around the world, different countries, different level of control, right? There are countries where it really runs wild. There are countries where it's more under control, And therefore you have all these, you do not have a uniform set of standards or a uniform way of so-called protocols for this. IATA and ICAO tried to come up with some protocols for it
Yes.
to work. But the first prerequisite is that the country must be able to control the epidemic. If the country is not able to put it under control, then there is nothing more to say. Seriously. Because if you don't control that, then nobody's going to travel. You can talk about masks, you can talk about various measures all by itself, right? But if the thing, the medical threat, the medical response, right, by the country, and that is not a industry problem, that is a national issue. That's a medical national issue. So if they cannot get it under control, then it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Now, so let's look individually. What are our responsibilities, right? Individually, yes, we have to clean regularly because it's a medical thing, and for any medical so-called threats, right, it's all about cleanliness. Way back in the years of the Black Death, the plagues, and until today, right? That's the basic clean hygiene. Then there's this, because this thing is about transmission, and we have seen that the transmission is through water droplets, or scientifically they say that it's also by aerosol. It's from human to human contact. Then you have to maintain the distance. Now the distance varies between different countries. For my country, it's 1 meter. For some countries, it's 2 meters, and some 1.5. Right, but nevertheless, it's about maintaining a distance, safe distance, so that there's no transmission. Then wearing a mask, of course, we've spoken about that. That is on the individual side. But a lot has to be done by the various authorities, the various government authorities, especially the medical side. And their role is very clear. They need to test, to be able to test, to be able to isolate and treat the patients. It's about bringing that infection under control before we can talk about the aviation and talk about travel, right? Then it's also been able to trace and also question their context. We are not talking about tracking individuals. Right? We are talking about being able to trace where all these so-called index cases have been in their context, so that is to break that chain of infection. Yeah. And of course, once they're able to do that, right, then it's about deciding when, who, and how to open up the travel again. And all this, right, all this has to be under very clear communications from the various authorities and the government. We have conflicting instructions in some countries that make the situation even worse, because the so-called the citizens, right, or whoever there is, they are hearing different things. But you cannot have that, right? It is a crisis. It's a crisis that we are all in it together. And for our industry to work, there have to be very clear instructions on what to do. And it has to be based on evidence-based, right? Based on scientific facts and not on hearsay. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And there's a lot of people with, their own agenda, whether it's religious or for whatever reason. Yeah. So this is what I was looking at. Yeah.
No, very good. I guess sort of it brings, and I think you mentioned it about the importance of testing on this. There's some short-term measures that perhaps are going to be helpful here. I think certainly the introduction of rapid testing, which is starting to be talked about, and very much talked about in the context of aviation and airports. And the main problem here is that, if I look here in the UK, we're allowed to, even if we are in lockdown at the moment, it's a lot less restrictive than the first time round. We're allowed to fly for work purposes. However, say that I wanted to go to Singapore, I will need then to quarantine for 2 weeks before I could do any work there. Or likewise, anybody coming will need to quarantine and then do the work, and that's extremely restrictive and certainly does not encourage any form of travel or invigoration onto our travel, and that from perspective, I guess what I'm interested is to see whether these rapid testing opportunities may bring something in the short term that can give shorter quarantines, green corridors, some pre-test and after landing tests that can allow an element of travel, an element of of movement to get started. And what's your views on that in the short term, i.e. 6 months? Of course, there's talks of vaccines as well, which may help. That may bring a different set of procedures to allow some form of movement.
There's an interesting experiment that's going to carry out between Singapore and Hong Kong next week. It's called the air travel bubble, right?
Okay.
What happened is that now, unlike today where we have all this green essentials travel or essential so-called people with businesses and the people that needs to travel between two countries, and you have to travel and then you have to take a test and then you have a 14 days quarantine, right? This thing between Singapore and Hong Kong that's going to start next week is that it is free for everybody, not just business or essential travel. It includes the travel that is leisure travel as well, and that's because both countries are able to reassure each other that they have their infection under control. They have the situation under control.
Yeah.
And what happens is that if I were to travel from Singapore to Hong Kong, I need to take a PCR test before my flight, 72 hours. Then I fly over to Hong Kong. And then in Hong Kong itself, I take another test because and that is about 6 hours at most at the airport. And if I'm cleared, I'm free to do whatever
Yeah.
I can go. So it's as free as is before pre-COVID times, right? It's as free as that. And anybody is able to do that, not just essential travels or so on and so forth. So
No.
if this works out, right, then maybe that will spur more countries to have this travel bubble and be expanded. Yeah? Because what Singapore is doing with Hong Kong is that both of these are air hubs in Asia. Both of them are hub airports, right? And both of them have more or less got their whole thing under control, and they feel comfortable with that. And then we will try to add in more and more. But I can assure you that the thing about testing, right? Right. Pre-testing is what the industry is trying to push for. IATA is trying to push for that.
Yeah.
So you test before you get on board the plane, right? And for them, because they're the airline association, it makes sense, right? Because you want to make sure that the passenger is not infectious when it's on board the plane. But from a country perspective, right? I want to make sure that when your lands down, uh, that touches down on my country, I want to make sure that he's actually not dangerous at all, and therefore I will require him to have a test if I don't trust the test that I take upline.
No.
So this question about having just a test in one pre-departure, I don't think it's going to be followed through or it's going to be widely accepted, right? It all depends on the level of risk between two countries. It also depends the level of trust between the two governments and how the country is taking
Which
care of the situation. Yeah.
which makes it difficult because certainly when we start looking at
Mm.
at, uh, at Europe, um, North America, the reality is that the regions are struggling to keep on top of the spread of the virus at the moment. That may change.
Mhm.
Lockdowns are in place and so on, but it's not at a level where one can envisage that is going to be a similar risk pattern that, say, Singapore or Hong Kong or other Asian countries that have been a lot more successful at containing the virus, and that's where the problem lies in that really when you start looking at the main movements, just North America to Europe, Europe to North America, and both to Asia and so on. That's what's driving our aviation industry, and those are likely to be um, quite difficult to see how those risk levels are going to be better managed. And I guess last point that I wanted to touch on is really
Wait,
sort of what.
Fernando, and exactly that's the point that you make, right? Because Europe was not ready uh, when they opened up for summer holidays. They were not able to contain the situation yet, and yet they open up, and hence we have this second wave over in Europe. So we have to be very careful. That's why I said that if a certain country is not able to control the situation, forget about opening up, because you will invite a second wave or even a third wave, and that's going to be more painful than before. Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree. I guess it goes down to an individual level where each individual is bringing an element of risk. Not all of us follow the rules in the similar fashion. Not all of us are exposed to the same levels, and that pre-testing and post-testing gives a degree of reassurance that the risks are being managed for that particular individual. And the risk of having to quarantine for 2 weeks, if actually is that then is left for the individual to choose. But let's see if that works. Um, the the last point really is then to look at looking ahead, looking at the long term. So what do we foresee will happen, over the longer term? So let's now put ourselves sort of in summer next year, fall, winter next year. Uh, what's in your mind? What do you think that is going to be? You walk into an airport, you look at how they run their operation. What do you think are going to be features that perhaps were not there 2 years ago?
I think we are seeing some bright, some sunlight or some light at the end of the tunnel. The news about the various vaccines and how the test results have been very positive, and the efficacy levels are quite high. So this is quite good for our industry, for people to start traveling again. And this together with the fact that if the countries are able to control, and even in this second lockdown, there are people who are more aware of what's happening, and they have examples, right? They have seen what happened in Victoria, Australia, where they have a lockdown, strict, painful, right? But after that, yeah,
Yeah.
they really bring down the numbers drastically, right? I hope it's going to happen with Europe before Christmas, and then when people sees that and say, "Hey, look, this is the way, this is the solution," and then together with the vaccine, and by the end of next year, hopefully the things will start getting back, and people can travel again. Certainly, there is a high propensity to travel. There are a lot of people with pent up that they need to see family and friends, or even just to get out of the house. Yeah,
Yes.
travel will always be there, right? At this
Yeah.
moment, is that the 14 days quarantine or 10 days or 15 days, that's very painful, because you're not going to go for a trip and then get quarantined the 14 days there and 14 days coming back. So the testing helps, right? The vaccine will certainly help. Um, there are enough so-called data as well as case studies to tell people what are the right things to do. The scientific evidence there are there. It's only for the government and for everybody to kind of so-called push or try to spread the message, right? And take away all those misinformation. There are a hell lot of misinformation out there, and sensationalization and things and so on.
Completely.
And we need to be able to do that from our perspective as airports, airlines, right, or anybody with
Yeah.
so-called responsibilities towards opening up travel.
And I hope that sooner rather than later we can see we can see some international guidelines, whether it is ICAO, whether it is IATA, that are taking then that starts introducing a degree of commonality across nations, that of which governments of these nations start taking notice, and allow ourselves to start integrating those into the airport environment in a way that is not so reactive. That's perhaps the main wish. I mean, from my perspective, I will think that when we look at the concept of operations of an airport in 2022, say, that we will see a number of management systems, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
that address safety, that address security, that address customer service, that address environment, and that address aviation health, and that is doing all of that in a consistent manner. So some airports will struggle with their infrastructure. I think you mentioned space a bit early. Not every airport has all the space, certainly more than an aircraft. But
Yeah.
making sure that you have the space for people for arriving sort of 3 hours early rather than 2 hours early, for instance, can be quite difficult. However, like everything, that integration into these international standards will allow that the airports of the future will integrate those measures. The infrastructure will be sufficient to allow for what, without expecting sort of the same drastic measures that we have seen over the last year, to allow the fact that actually the operation needs to flex according to the risk of similar pandemics in future. Let's see. That's touch wood. That's something which we will see.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, I was hoping that this pandemic will push the various countries, right, to adopt this self-service check-in and self-service transaction. But unfortunately, right, it is the other way around, because when despite the fact that that all the things are over there, now they want to look at whether you have the PCR test documentation, whether you have the authority to travel. So rather than being self-service and whizzing through and getting through as soon as possible, it has the opposite effect that you have to go and show all this documentation. So somehow, yeah. So we see how it goes. It's an evolving situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very good. Well, I think this is going to conclude our session, and I don't think we've got any questions from audience and so on. So I think we'll be taking there. Anthony has sent his excuses by text. He's tried everything, different browsers and so on. So look, thank you very much. Really, really interesting conversation. And let's hope that this short-term improvements, but more importantly, long-term improvements are there, and that we can continue this conversation in person, for example, rather than over silly screens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.